today's video we are going to paint the supervillain from the Strontium Dog miniatures game, the mutant Max Bubba. This figure comes in the starter set, The Good, the Bad and the Mutie, that Warlord Games released the past summer. It took me quite a bit to get it painted, but here we are. So if we go and have a look at the cover art on the Warlord website, we can see that it has a golden suede trench coat. So let me show you how I painted that. Like 99% of the times, I started priming the miniature with Vallejo German Panzer Grey. I like it more than black. To get the coat to a golden yellow color, I started my first layer with Vallejo model color Orange Brown. For me this is the best brown in the game. I put a drop of color on my wet palette and then added another drop of Vallejo Airbrush Flow Improver. After slightly thinning the paint, I started painting the trench. As you can see, the paint doesn't cover completely with the first pass, so I needed two. As I am base coating now, I don't really mind the brush direction. Just avoid getting too much paint on the model so you don't lose detail. When you reach a good solid brown on the coat, it's time to move on to the next layer. The yellow I chose for the highlight is the Citadel Flash Gits Yellow. Needless to say that we are not going to paint it directly on the brown. We need to create a proper color gradation, so I just added a little dab on the palette and mixed it with the brown. When two colors are really distant like this brown and this yellow, always mix them to ease the transition between the two. You can repeat the mixing several times if you want, but avoid directly painting one color straight on the other. The result is horrible. With this new color we created, we proceed with the second layer. This time we start focusing more on the raised areas that catch more light than the recesses. We want to give the model a beautiful 3D depth, so highlight all the folds you see using this yellowish brown. Be careful not to put it in the recesses though. Try also to achieve a smooth transition between the base and the highlight color. It doesn't look very good if the transition is too harsh. I will keep going until I'm done with this layer, and then I will get back with the next one. I didn't want to get too much yellow in the mix, so for my second highlight I decided to bring in some Model Air Sand Ivory. Again, I put a drop on the palette and proceeded to mix it with the first highlight. This step is exactly like the previous one, but notice how I concentrate more on the top of the folds the more I move towards brighter colors. So maintain your strokes thin and precise and start to give the folds their final 3D look. probably already got how this works, so I move on to the next step. If you take a close look at the model, it looks like the trench is made of some wild animal's fur. I will assume it's a wolf just because it's cool. So I got some modeler light gray to paint the fur that is visible. As you can see, I went directly on the miniature with the gray. It's a good color, I like how it interacts with the German gray below. To paint these small lines you need to be precise. I am just tracing the lines here, but just a small mistake and I lose that wonderful transition that I just painted. I really wanted to avoid that. You can't hear it, but I was barely breathing. Now, this gray works as our base coat for the fur, so we need to go back on the folds again with a lighter color to highlight it. After painting the base gray, we move on to the edge highlight. To brighten up the gray, I use Marl color silver gray, one of my favorite whites. I especially use it when I have to highlight cold colors, while I prefer ivory for warm colors. The gray paint is pretty runny, so I just mixed in a small dab of white and started putting in the highlights. Note how I carefully approach this step. You can ruin all the work if you go on too thick or miss the edge landing on the brown. As you can see, I'm moving around the miniature, but again I'm concentrating more on the brighter spots like the top of the trench coat folds and the top of the shoulders. Even though there is some fur texture there, I try to enhance it by using appropriate brush strokes. Once the first round of highlights is done, I went through it once again, but adding more white this time. I can say I was probably 90% pure white at this stage. I will get it done and I will be back. If you remember the cover art, Max has a bald head covered in burns and sores. I think the best way to paint them is to make them look like Freddy Krueger's face in the Nightmare movies. But before getting to that level of detail, let's first paint the head to a decent Caucasian flesh tone. To achieve it, I use brown rose and basic skin tone. We'll mess everything up later. Brown rose gets wonderful coverage even when applied directly on black, so I use it often as my flash color base. Next up is a 50-50 mix of brown rose and basic skin tone. We want to achieve our first round of highlights with this mix, so I painted the face as I did with the coat. Finally, use straight basic skin tone to achieve your final highlight. In the next step, we'll mess up the head a little bit to make it look like freshly wounded flesh. To paint the scars on the head, I put a drop of Vallejo red wash and Citadel Druzy violet wash on my wet palette. I want to glaze the colors on the model, so I thin the paint quite a bit. You can see the consistency against the white on the palette. So we grab the red first and go directly between the sores and the scars, keeping in mind that blood from the inflammation probably concentrates on the bottom, not on the top of the ridges. As you can see, I covered all the bruises, big and small, that he has on the head. Next, we repeat the same scheme using the violet wash. As the purple and the red get mixed together, you can see how the effect immediately becomes super realistic. This dude's face looked like a mask made of wounded flesh, so I decided to avoid painting the eyes and the mouth. They are deep shadow areas anyway, so I just got some Army Painter's strong tone wash and did a quick pin wash on the mouth and the eyes. Okay, don't ask me why, but I painted the boots off cam. Now I move on to the trousers. I decided to give him some denim jeans, so the base color is, of course, Gravedigger denim from P3. Painting realistic looking jeans is just too easy. You just base coat with this color, and then you go over the ridges with a light bluish white-ish highlight. In my standard denim recipe, I use blue-gray pale from Model Color as an highlight. See how easy it is? Just a couple of layers and the jeans are done. Max Bubba's terrifying weapon is called the Blazooga. We're going to paint it in a quick and easy no metallic metal using black and game color Somber Gray. I already base coated the weapon with a 50-50 mix of the two colors, and now I start moving up to brighter colors by slowly adding more Somber Gray to the mix. We try to accentuate the curves on the Blazooga coming from the top just like real light does. Highlight all the ridges. Next step, dilute some straight Somber Gray with Flow Improver and repeat once again. The result is already pretty good, but we want to go up a notch. We grab the gray we used for the fur and bring it to a thin glaze consistency. Now we can mix and blend the different highlights for an even better result. Just a last touch, some edge highlighting on the mouth of the Blazooga and all the sharp edges using the same gray, silver gray mix that we used before. And here's how I painted my Max Bubba. So here you can see the bad guy fully painted and based, chilling out with his friends. I'm totally digging the result. I think the coat looks great and the NMM on the Blazooga came out clutch. I also forgot to mention that I used the same NMM technique on the chain he has on the back, as you can see here. Let me also quickly show you the finished companions. Here's Brute Mosley. Look how wild this sculpt is. I had a lot of fun with these blues. Next up is Impetigo Jones, the coolest gangster in the mob, with the leather coat and the red scarf. Deadly with style. Last villain I have painted is Skull. You wanna know why this name? Well, guess why. Cause his head doesn't have any skin on it. I painted him as a homage to Skeletor, green and purple. Also, have you seen the cool bases? I'll show you the details of how I did them in the next video. Stay tuned. If you like this tutorial, please like and subscribe so I can keep making more. And don't forget to leave your comments and critiques in the comment section below so I can keep improving. Thank you for watching.